Most creators spend their careers chasing what the market wants. Soman Chainani did the opposite. He walked away from Hollywood, wrote the book he wanted to write, and built a 13-year publishing phenomenon that sold millions of copies worldwide and landed on Netflix. In this episode, Soman breaks down the creative philosophy that made it all possible, why protecting your vision matters more than chasing trends, how staying financially independent kept his writing fearless, and what his newest novel, Young World, reveals about trusting your instincts over everything else. If originality is something you've been told to dial back, this conversation will make you think twice. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. All right, Soman Chainani, welcome to Beyond Fulfillment.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so excited that you could be here. So Soman, we are here at BookCon 2026, and we're just talking off camera how it's crazy the amount of people. And
it's crazy. It's insane every time you come to the Javits Center, but especially for BookCon because of the enthusiasm, the energy, and the sheer amount of people.
Yeah, unreal. So for our audience, we have an audience of entrepreneurs, startup founders. Many are not in the publishing world, so they may not know who you are. Just to set the stage for our listeners, can you give us your backstory?
Sure. I actually started in the business world as a consultant, and did that for a few years, but ultimately really dreamed of being a storyteller. And so I pivoted, went to film school, started, gaining a career as a screenwriter in Hollywood and as a director, and then decided I wanted more control and took a story that I, really saw for a film and turned it into a novel, so I could have complete and utter control over it. And ultimately, that was my first novel, published in 2013, and it took off. It was called The School for Good and Evil, and it became a 13-year series. And that's what I did for 13 years. It was 6 books, 2 prequels, a handbook, graphic novel, a huge movie from Netflix, a $175 million movie, starring Charlize Theron and Kerry Washington and Lawrence Fishburne, and that was sort of the high point of that series. And so I knew the time had come to do something else. And so my second original novel comes out now, so which hopefully will spawn its own kind of life. So that's kind of what happened. I started in the business world and then realized I was actually meant to be a storyteller.
Okay, yeah, and appreciate that high-level overview. So let's dig into some of that, because when you wrote the School for Good and Evil, right, you were at a low point in your career where you after business you went into Hollywood, and you were looking to do several projects. Doors kept kind of closing, right? You wanted to stay true to your art, but it was tough given the industry type of thing.
100%.
And so you decided, fuck it. I'm just going to write what I want to write, and whatever happens is going to happen.
Yeah.
And that is that is when you wrote The School for Good and Evil.
Yeah, I felt like I wanted to put something out in the world, my first thing out in the world, because nothing was coming out. I was writing screenplays, I was getting paid really well, I was going to direct a movie, and then things kept, appearing in the way, as they do in Hollywood, right? 90% of projects don't get made. And I just felt like I want to put something out to the world. And when I do, I want it to be something I can stand behind. And I feel like there was too many times where I had to compromise or water things down. And with School for Good and Evil, I just felt kind of unleashed. Like, I'm going to write this book. I'm not going to listen to what anyone says. I'm going to write what I think, kids would want. And when it came out, it was pretty controversial. Reviewers were like, this is very different than what, kids seem to be reading right now. But that ultimately is what allowed it to just kind of catch fire, and that's what happened. It became a word of mouth kind of force, and ended up spreading to, it's in 35 languages, 110 countries, and it was just because it was different. But for something to be different and work requires you to be able to just like go for a big risk, and be bold. And I think that came as a result of a lot of doors being closed in my face.
So when that happens, right, because you're at this moment where you just don't care, I'm going to write what I want to write, and then when it takes off like that, what was that like for you?
I think I started to feel pressure because they wanted sequels, and I ended up doing 5 sequels to it. So you start to feel like there's an audience, and then again you start to feel that compromising feeling. And I think I just have to keep reminding myself with each book is, books take over a year to write. I can't write to somebody else's specifications. Like, it has to be what I want to do. And I think that became the guiding light in my writing career, which is I'm not going to listen to anyone, not the fans, not the market. not, well, the only person I ever trusted was the editor that I was working with, right? And that became a very deep relationship and almost like a psychologist that I would work with. But otherwise, I didn't let the outside world in. And I feel like that's part of the thing is like to make sure that if you have a vision that you strongly believe in, almost messianic in, what that vision is, to make sure that the final product actually matches that vision. I think too often we have a vision and we allow ourselves to be swayed by things along the way, but ultimately the vision is the key thing. And it's the same thing that happened when, 13 years later, I finally wrote my second original novel. Same thing. What's the vision and make sure the final product matches that.
Okay, and also as the success started coming in, I mean, the book series sold 4.5 million copies
4.5 million
at last count. So, but as the success starts happening, you still kept your day job for a long time.
I was a tutor. I used to tutor kids for the SAT and college applications and things like that. And I loved it because it kept me in touch with teenagers, and it let me learn the languages and the patterns and everything like that. And so I didn't want to give it up for two reasons. One, I really enjoyed working with them. And the second thing was I didn't want writing to be my sole source of income because then I felt like there would be too much pressure on me. And I couldn't be as bold and take as many risks as I wanted to. And I feel like by not having it be my sole source of income, I could just kind of, not think in terms of the market, or I couldn't be afraid. Because what's the worst case that happens? I lose my entire writing career and I just go back to what I was doing before, which is tutoring kids.
Okay. All right. And now it's interesting because as the School for Good and Evil takes off, right, naturally the film stuff comes around. And first it was Universal. That didn't work out. And then ultimately it came out on Netflix. But it was a long process.
Long process. It got bought the day the book came out by Universal in 2013. And then we went through development and everything like that. I think it was too close to Wicked in terms of that movie they were developing, and Universal couldn't have both of them. And so ultimately, they sold the movie to Netflix, or Netflix bought it from them. And then, we started over with Netflix. And, you go through directors were fired, writers were fired. I think there were 9 different writers on it. And so you go through this whole process to get the final result. But ultimately, as the author, you're not the driving force. With a $175 million movie, there's, 700 people working on the movie. So you learn to kind of just accept it as an interpretation of the book, but it's not your baby. Instead, what I sort of saw it as is almost like a very expensive trailer for the book. And so what happened after the movie came out is it starts a whole new generation of kids reading the books, which allows you then, in an entrepreneurial way, to think, okay, I have, a series that normally after 10 years, a book series would start to fade. Now it's, regenerated. And so, we start to think about, okay, new covers, maybe new graphic novels, like you start to just reinvigorate it because, especially with the kid audience, 8 to 12-year-olds, you can have something that's evergreen, that can really last forever, because some of the series really do, because new kids come in, their siblings pass it down, it just becomes something that renews itself as long as you keep kind of watering the plant.
If your business is an e-commerce brand, this message is for you. Logistics can make or break you. If you're tired of being just a number to those big box 3PLs, you need to check out our team at Easy DC 3PL. We're a different kind of partner, built specifically for growing brands that ship between 1,000 and 10,000 orders per month. We offer warehousing, fulfillment, and transportation with a focus on personalized service and flexibility. Our central Kentucky location gives you nationwide reach, turning logistics into a competitive advantage. So if you're ready to partner with a 3PL that actually gets your brand, visit easydc3pl.com. And with the movie, how involved were you in that process?
Somewhat. I mean, I could interfere when I thought it was going well off track, and I tried. But ultimately, I feel like in most cases the author is kind of thrown aside at some point, because I don't know. It's just otherwise they would trust you for everything. You're the expert on it. So the more they can get rid of you, the better.
Okay. All right. And so after that whole process, now you've written your second original novel, which is called Young World. You have the book
it's
right here.
It's very bright. I don't know if you can see it on camera. The camera can actually it's funny. It's day glow neon, and day glow neon actually doesn't show up on screen, so you can't really see the real color of it until you hold it in your hand. But trust me, it's very bright.
And so your first book series, School of Good and Evil, was a kid's a fiction novel.
Yeah.
This is also fiction, but this is a very different type of story. Tell us about this story.
Yeah, so this one, again, I had the vision of this color. I had this vision of like a nuclear color, and like an orange. And I thought to myself, okay, what fairy tale would this represent? And I started to realize it wasn't a fairy tale at all. This one was going to be a political party. I started to think like, okay, there's going to be a political party with this color of, nuclear orange. And it became a story about young people banding together, forming a third party that takes over the American government and then takes over 8 other governments in the world. And now you have 8 governments led by teenagers in the first 20 pages of the book. And what was interesting about this is it was the same thing as School for Good and Evil, where I had like a clear vision of the inside was going to be just as neon as the outside. You'll see there's over 150 visuals that are neon inside the book. And I wanted to kind of break the format of what we're used to with books. I wanted it to be its own thing and feel like a multimedia novel. And so again, it felt like starting my career over because I had to convince a publisher to let me go in a totally different direction, reinvent the form, spend money on a very expensive book. But that was the vision I had from the beginning. And so I was very strong about it in the same way that I was about School for Good and Evil.
Okay. All right. And so this comes out
May 5th.
May 5th. May 5th. Okay. And I understand there's already a studio bidding war on the movie rights?
Yeah. So we have a lot of producers interested and studios interested in the book. I'm holding on to it for right now because I feel like with the School for Good and Evil, I think I gave it away too early almost, and I would like to just have a little more control with this one. And I don't feel the urgency or need to necessarily get it made into a movie or TV, right away. I'd like it to be done by the right people.
Okay, all right. And throughout this whole process, when you look back, right, like how you started in business, that didn't work. The Hollywood stuff didn't work at first. You wrote on your own terms and experienced massive success. And coming this whole way, and now with starting with another book and having this much excitement before it even comes out, what would you say is the best part of this journey for you?
I think for me, I don't lead from a place of ego and conscious mind. I'm always trying to tune in to what kind of like the creative elves or maybe like the side of myself that I'm not conscious of wants to do. So like when I started having dreams of this crazy color, I actually like had faith in it. Like, okay, there's something that, you know what I mean? Like I didn't even know what that color was. Like I'd never seen it before. It was like a traffic cone. I was like, why am I dreaming of that neon color? So to learn to trust instincts that are beyond the surface, I think is super important. I think every entrepreneur and CEO needs to spend time like in a quiet room, like, some version of meditation where you're just tuning in and looking for things that you might not be conscious of. And I feel like that's very crucial.
Wow, love that. Okay, Soman, if fans, other people want to get in touch or follow your work, what's the best way people can find you online?
Sure, my Instagram at SomanC, and then the website for Young World is revoltingyouth.org. That's revoltingyouth.org. If you pre-order the book early, you also I kept diaries during the making of it because it was such a crazy process. It felt like I was building like Noah's Ark with this nutty book. So I kept diaries for 3.5 years. And so I'm collecting the diaries in a special edition paperback called Diary of a Novel, and you get it for free if you order Young World. So that's at revoltingyouth.org.
Okay. We'll link all that in the show notes for everyone. Soman, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right.